Martin, and welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring me, Tom Martin, longtime journalist. I've been a producer for ABC News, Good Morning America, CBS News, CNN, and so on. And I still love learning new things, meeting interesting people. And that's why I love this podcast series. It gives me an opportunity to talk with David Parker, author of two excellent books, which I highly recommend. A San Francisco Conservative, which gave our series its title, obviously, and his prior book to that, new book, Income and Wealth, with the third one on the way. And David joins us from San Francisco. Hey, David, how are you today?
I'm fine, Tom. Thanks.
Great to see you. Great to see you. Thank you. It's interesting, in terms of my journalism background, I got my start covering politics in Washington, D.C., and times like the present really have me kind of riveted to the news. I have some friends who say, don't pay attention to the news. It's too depressing and alarming. I guess I understand that. But it is interesting about the change in government. It's been a very volatile situation, a very polarized situation in recent years with Trump and Pelosi and on and on and on. But I think one reason I love our conversations, David, is you are always very optimistic. I just wondered if you were, we've made some recent changes, elected some new leaders in Congress for the coming session. Do you still have that sense of optimism?
Yes, but not for those reasons. Not because of Congress.
Yes.
It's perverse, and that's one reason I write. But the wealthy are indifferent to Congress, who's in office, what party's in office. The wealthy contribute to both parties equally. And depending on who's in office, that's how they're going to rent seat from government. They're independent. The rich are not paying taxes. That's why they're indifferent. And the public should know that. It's one reason I'm writing, that the middle class are paying for everything. And to be honest, we should have a 50 to 70% tax on anybody who's willing to work. That way, they'll start questioning their leaders in government. Why are we spending and literally wasting money on government programs? Because we're paying for it. It's coming right out of our salary. You cannot tax the rich. They have accountants that won't let it happen. And when the rich get nervous, because we have all read Robin Hood when we were children, they get their money out. I like to say that Apple has a beautiful headquarters, but it only appears to be their headquarters. It's a space station in Cupertino, California. Apple is headquartered in Ireland, where the tax rate is a third of American tax rate, and all their money, $200 to $250 billion in cash, is on Jersey Island in the English Channel. It's not in American banks because they're nervous. And many companies have their money in tax havens throughout the world. And that's not talked about. And maybe the one good thing that Donald Trump did from day one, he lowered the corporate tax rate from 39% to 25%. And then he yelled at all the corporations, I'm doing this. Now you bring your money back to this country, or I'll put them right back up again. So that's proof that what I'm saying is true.
And what about, again, we're speaking about continuity, regardless of who's elected and who's in power and so on. I certainly follow what you're saying there. It makes sense to me. What about, democracy itself, this great institution,
American democracy has endured because it's based on a constitution that's one page long. You can go to Washington, D.C. It's on an art easel in one of those buildings, and you can look at it and read it. One page means that it's general. We will elect our legislature. The legislature, it will not be appointed. It will be an elected legislature. And only Congress will make laws, not the EPA, not the Department of Education, not the Department of Immigration. which they do now, but they shouldn't be. Congress should be making laws because they're accountable. People will, congressmen for 2 years, they're not doing a good job, they get thrown out. EPA is doing a bad job, they're never thrown out. We have a fourth agency in government now, which is an administrative state, a very bad idea. It's so simple, our Constitution. That's why it works. It can count for, the founding fathers were concerned that it lasts forever, that it can handle anything that comes up, gay rights, abortion, anything, our Constitution can handle it. It says that the government has some, we enumerate the powers of the government. Article 1, Section 8 says the government can do this, 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 and this. They can have a post office, they can run a navy, but that's it. The states handle everything else. We're retaining power of the states, because if we didn't do that, the states wouldn't have signed and agreed to the Constitution. We wouldn't have a country. We wouldn't have the United States of America if the states didn't retain a lot of power, as if they were separate little countries. That's what made it all possible. And we've lost that. We've reversed that. The government is very powerful now, and the states are far less powerful, and the people are far less powerful. And so it's all wrong. I'm saying go back to the original founding fathers' vision. It was correct. Individual responsibility and very limited government.
Yeah, yeah. In speaking of the balance of power, I know you've written about, the three houses, or the three branches of government. I was just curious about your thoughts, if you think things are getting a little out of kilter now, in the sense that we have the Supreme Court justices telling us when life does or does not begin. I recently heard an interview with former Vice President Pence, and he said, I know there's a congressional committee looking into, this such questionable insurrection incident, but I don't think it's appropriate for congressmen to have the power to bring somebody from the executive branch in for questioning and so on. Do you think this balance of power is still holding up intact?
Yes. We have a division in the United States that looks like 50% of the people are good people. They're progressives. And 50% of the nation are awful people. They're conservatives. But that's not the reality. This nation is moderate and a little bit conservative. But you wouldn't know it by looking at Congress or looking at the elections, because politicians have so gerrymandered the election districts so that a Democrat is only running against Democrats, and a Republican is only running against Republicans, and they never have to convince the other side that they in fact are moderate, that they understand the other point of view. They never have to say that. So if you're a Democrat, you're not going to win unless you're the most extreme left, and you're Republican, you're going to be the most extreme on the right to win. So we have a Congress that looks like everybody's extreme, when in fact they're all lying. They're all moderate, but they say what they think will get them elected, and so they talk extreme. That's not what the nation really is, and somehow we've still managed to survive. We have a change of power that is always smooth. With Donald Trump the last time, that's the only time maybe in American history anybody contested it. If you lost, you lost. You walked away and say, good luck to the next guy. I don't know why Trump couldn't do that. But that's the strength of this country. The whole world knows it, that we're not going to have a revolution, that you can count on the United States as a steady block. The steadiness in the world. The keel to the world.
Yeah. I'll just pause to mention real briefly that, again, if you're joining us right now, midstream here, this is a San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring me, Tom Martin, and our esteemed author, David Parker, author of Income and Wealth and a San Francisco Conservative. David, I've shared with our audience in recent weeks, recent episodes, I really enjoy having an advanced look at your essays, through the wonderful essays that you write. You put so much thought and scholarly detail into that'll be featured in your next book, I understand. And one of your essays that you shared with recently was about France and the United States. And as this is being recorded, we have French Prime Minister Macron visiting the White House, fancy state dinner, and all that kind of thing. Um, I'd love for you to share with our listeners, with our audience, some of your observations about how the French government is different. There's some fundamental differences, right? Can you tell us more about that?
I'm not so sure. The French culture is so strong that it looks like France is sometimes a very different culture. But Macron himself is a very, almost a very American kind of a guy. He just has some almost like Silicon Valley roots, and he's promoting French entrepreneurialism, which exists, but it's repressed by their socialistic streak, and he's trying to break France of that streak. Bernie Sanders was asked at one time, Bernie, what country in Europe, what European socialist country do you have in mind when you talk socialism? He says, Denmark. Why can't we be like Denmark? He says. The Prime Minister of Denmark immediately, he spoke at a convention or something at Harvard University. He says, don't look at Denmark. We are not a socialist country. Like Sweden, we're undoing all of that stuff. It's a complete mistake. Don't look at us. That's a wrong direction.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah.
Interesting. What was the question?
Yeah. So, do you foresee any other challenges to democracy, or is the Constitution such a perfectly designed document that we can really feel reassured?
Yeah, it's perfectly designed. If you want some change in this country, we have to stop so much. We have to stop government from trying to be too powerful, stop government from trying to solve all our problems, which mostly are personal. You cannot solve social, even economic problems with money. You're wasting, you're throwing it down the river. And you won't, if you necessarily ungerrymander the voting districts, we're going to just coast along just like we are. And we're at a verge of bankruptcy. We're not going to go bankrupt because the government can always just go write a check, or they can cut Social Security a little bit, cut Medicare a little bit. We'll solve our problems. We're not going to go broke. But my third book, soon to come out, I'm entitling it Rome 476. And one message from that is that why did Rome fall in 476? It had the strongest military in the world that it had ever known. And the Huns walked in, they didn't have swords, they had sledgehammers. The Roman soldiers just sat on their sword and says, go ahead, smash Rome to smithereens, make it look a city of dust. Their White House, their Supreme Court, their Congress, their forum, everything, the huge Colosseum. They left one wall. They were so exhausted from sledgehammering, they couldn't knock that fourth wall down. And I say, why did that happen? The soldiers hadn't been paid, and they weren't going to lift a finger. And why did that happen? All the tax revenue, and there was a lot of tax revenue, went to pay interest on the debt. There was nothing left for any services whatsoever. And we're very close to that right now. Social Security, Medicare, the military, it's all paid for by borrowing. That's, you would think we're on the way out. We're not, but because we'll solve that problem. But Greece was on the way out in 2010 with the Euro crisis. They borrowed and had no way of repaying it. They were out of money. And Greece unbelievably solved that problem by cutting Social Security payments in half. I was in Greece in 2010, so I know for a fact. I was with some school teachers, and they showed me their check. Here is my check, and the Social Security is cut in half right there. My payment, and they were all laughing. I said, "Why are you laughing?" Because we never should have had so much money in the first place. Every politician in Greece runs by saying, vote for me and I'll double your Social Security. I'll double government spending. We'll build roads to nowhere. And everybody says, okay. And then it said, when they took it away, it says, okay. So don't underestimate people. We'll resolve this thing, but not in the near future. We have to go back to what the founding fathers created. It's correct. Maximum individual liberty coupled to maximum individual responsibility. Very limited government. You shouldn't see it. If you see a post office, oh, there's the government. Or if you see a court building, that's about it.
Yeah.
If you see some jet planes in the sky for military, okay, that's good. We got a military. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all, really.
Well, excellent insights and perspective on that. I know people can learn a lot more about this from reading your books, Income and Wealth and a San Francisco Conservative. And you can purchase these books by visiting David's website, davidparkeressays.com, or by going to Amazon, of course. Any closing words, David?
Yes. All my books are interesting in that I give today's problems. I show how those same problems existed throughout history and how different civilizations handled those very same problems. And some even handle them better than us. I like that. I love reading about 5th century Athens, 1st century Rome, 18th century Age of Enlightenment, and how they handled the very same problems we have better. And it's part of the charm of my books, I believe.
Absolutely. No, I love that quality. So great. Well, thanks again. I love the conversation and look forward to the next time.
Sure. I'll be back. Thank you.